Alright. Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Uh, my name is Shelby. If you haven't seen my welcome home video, please watch that. But I wanted to take a moment today to briefly discuss how I got here. What led me to here? Right now, I'm out at near my camp at a creek in Forest Grove. And this is my favorite spot to be right now in the world, next to home. If I could be with my kids, I like this better. So if I could be home with my kids every day, that would be the perfect place to be. But I can't. And, well, that's okay, I guess. It's what I want most in life. But, well, I guess most in life I want to be happy, and I want them to be happy. And while they were growing up, I wasn't a very good father because I was not a very good husband. And, well, in short, marriage fell apart. I took it hard. I don't know how the ex-wife really took it. She didn't want the divorce. I was convinced that she did forever. But my kids took it the hardest. Well, I think in some degree I took it harder than them, but in other ways they took it far harder than I did because they were young. And that's hard to deal with when your parents no longer want to be together. Or when one does and the other one doesn't, and then it goes back and forth. And that was just the beginning. I suffered from depression for a long time. Never was hooked on drugs or anything like that. I was lucky. But I had a serious issue with alcohol. And I just drank way too much. And I got to be a very angry drunk. And that is my one regret in life. I actually have two. And I say it the same way every time. But I don't talk about the other one. My one regret is that I didn't change sooner. And because of that, I led myself down a terrible path of failure in my life. I lost an amazing job. Believe it or not, about 3 years ago, I was working as a senior system administrator, making more than $120,000 a year. And I just let the divorce get to me and ended up losing that job. That's wonderful. And sorry, I'm in a very good place now, but I wasn't. And that led me down this rabbit hole where I lost that job. I couldn't find another job. I took a job in construction with my brother for a while to get by. And then that didn't work out because he couldn't afford to pay me because I wasn't good enough. And then I took another job in construction doing gutter work. And I was really good at it, but it didn't work out. And my health was a factor there only a little bit. But then I sat on my ass for more than a year, suffering from severe depression, and it just got worse and worse. At one point, I was suicidal, and I thank God that my ex-wife cared enough to call the police when I reached out to her, and to all those Second Amendment thumpers that just want to do away with the Second Amendment because they think it's evil, the police came, took my guns, and were very kind to me and understood. And at some point when I got over that, I got them back. And I only ever used them for target practice at the range. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. And near the end of that, and it wasn't going to end. It didn't seem like it was ever going to end. I was just depressed. I couldn't handle life, period. I could no longer look for work. My life was just, to me, that terrible, which sucked for my children, my younger two boys, because they came over every weekend or when I could get them and wanted me to be happy. And then one day, one of my sons said something to me that totally turned me around. He said to me, and I hope I don't cry, he looked me in the eye while I was sitting there just playing video games because I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even show them love anymore. He just looked at me and told me the story about how he didn't want to change shifts with his friend and coworker. And the reason being was that he told me, he asked me if I knew why, and I just shrugged my shoulders. And I want to say his name, but I'm not going to, and I'm not going to mention my children's names. I've already had to cut stuff out of a video I did last night following my first video. And he's just looked at me in my eye and said to me that he wanted to come over because when they can't come over, I give them love. And that was the first time I ever heard anything like that. Yes, I love you, I love you, I love you too. That gets said a lot in families. But what we don't do is remind the other individuals in our lives that we know that they love them. And that suddenly turned me around. I was no longer depressed. I had dreams, I had goals. Not big dreams like I have now. But the first and foremost thing I thought to myself is, what the hell have I been doing? I suddenly realized that I had to live for my children as well as myself, and I wasn't living for anybody. And when I realized that, I started making plans to get my life cleaned up. The first thing I did, and I had to do, was get sober. And I am so grateful that I have since then. But once I wound up on the street, and I had a friend that tried to help me. I don't consider him a friend anymore. I may have mentioned it yesterday, but maybe someday in the future, who knows. But I walked out of an unsafe environment and into the freezing cold. It was the first night that last winter where it was 32 degrees. I had nothing. I had no jacket on. I'm sorry, I had a jacket. I didn't have my blood pressure medication. I didn't have my phone. I actually left it there because I didn't want anybody to try to contact me. And I just left and I gave up, but what I was trying to do was save the woman that I was living with some heartache because she thought I wasn't doing well. And the truth of the matter is, I was doing fantastic, but she couldn't see that, and that was part of her issues, was that she had a hard time seeing positive things. And here I was, just nothing but positive at the time, or at least I thought I was. And I didn't want to be there anymore, causing her pain, so I left. I ended up on the street, and the following morning, I spent the whole morning talking to a man at 7-Eleven. And I didn't know what I was going to do other than stay there and talk to somebody. So after that, I started looking into shelters. I didn't even know anything about any of this stuff. It's widely available if you know where to look. And I found, through the help of that woman, a shelter that was an even worse environment than the street. And I had a panic attack there and left, and then finally ended up out here in Forest Grove, where I met some most amazing people trying to help people who have been suffering from homelessness, people who have been suffering for years, some of them decades. And here I was, just totally unprepared, and somehow I made it work. But it was difficult. I have gone through some of the most troubling things that you can imagine in life, just because I was on the street. One time I was always looking for work. I was at the employment office getting help with my resume. I was working. I got a job at that 7-Eleven thanks to the owner there, Bilal. He's a great man. He gave me a job. He didn't care that I was homeless. I lost, or rather left, that job when I got COVID and ended up in the Hilton after many months of being homeless. But last year, or rather earlier this year, they closed the shelters early. And I didn't know what I was going to do until Celeste, she's an amazing person. She needs everybody's support right now. I need to take a break. No, I can do this. So I won't talk about her anymore other than to say that she runs the shelters out here, along with a lot of volunteers that give their time and hearts to help us. And there's a lot of people that are volunteering out there that don't know what or why they are doing what they are doing. But I couldn't do all of the shelters, and so I was camping once a week, and I was making it work. And then everything fell apart. No more shelters, COVID, no more rest in hotels because that had all run up. The county only had so much money. And I wound up out here. The most beautiful land I can imagine. And it's trashed. Not always. This is not too bad. This was in the creek here not too long ago. But that's how I got to where I am today. And the truth of the matter is, this can happen to anybody. At one of the shelters that I stayed at, only twice actually. The first time I was there, the second time I was there was a paramedic that was volunteering to give us physicals as well as rudimentary health care if possible. He looked at my feet because I was having some issues. But he told me that he has seen this a lot, that this is so prevalent in the world, but specifically with firefighters, paramedics, emergency responders, but also businessmen, people in IT, people who work in groceries, everywhere. This affects everybody, or can. What he told me was that everybody is 3 steps away from being homeless. For firefighters, it's typically, as he said, an on-the-job injury, and for them it's a severe injury, often back injuries, due to the weight of their equipment. They get pain medication and quickly get hooked on it, but because pain medication usually only lasts so long, or works so well for so long, that turns into other things. But whether or not it does, they are usually out of work for a long time and unable to do so. And disability takes forever to get. And at some point in time, the piper comes. Those are my words, not his. And they lose their home because they have lost their means of being able to take care of themselves, being able to pay for bills, being able to pay for food, and being able to pay for their housing. And once that happens, it's all over for most people. I've read statistics where basically, if you have been homeless for 3 months, that's it. If you don't get out of homelessness, if you don't get off the street and into housing or back on your feet, then you are more than likely to be homeless for the rest of your life. And I refuse to admit that, and I still refuse to admit that for myself. I won't allow it to happen to me. I'm back on the street now because I want to be. I'm going to spend this time finishing getting my life together. because I need to be the father that my children need me to be. And this is, I think, the best place for me to do it. I'm well taken care of. I take care of myself for the most part, but volunteers still come and aid so many of us with food, supplies, assistance with filling out forms for Social Security, housing. Unfortunately for somebody like me, there's almost no options available other than food stamps. It's a sad state of affairs, but if you are a firefighter and you have a clean record and you were great at your job, but you broke your back and got hooked on meds, you could end up spending the rest of your life homeless because you have a clean record, and there's very little, if any, aid or assistance, at least here in the wonderful state of Oregon. And I say that sarcastically, but also I love this state because preferential treatment is given to people who are suffering from drug addiction, alcohol addiction, which I did, but I no longer did. And I once joked that, well, I guess suppose, I could start taking up drinking again, and then I can get off the streets. Well, that wasn't an option for me, and it was absolutely 100% satire, and I didn't mean it, but I thought it was absolutely ridiculous that I couldn't get housing or assistance even with housing because I didn't have a disability, I didn't have a drug problem, and I didn't have a felony conviction on my record. And I think that's wrong. Don't get me wrong. Those people, and I don't mean those people, but people that have those issues in their lives definitely need help and need off the street if they are ready to do so. But I have been ready to do so since day one. And since day one, I've been told I'm sorry. And that led me to a breakdown that was worse than just me not being able to see my children every day. And that's what so many people on the street suffer from for so long. You see homeless people on the street, you forget to think they probably have sons and daughters, ex-wives, maybe at the time, a wife or a husband, and other family and friends that are out there somewhere, ancillary or integral to their lives. And they get treated like they are homeless and that there is something wrong with them. And that is not true, at least not because of that. The first time I remember being treated like I was homeless, I walked into PCC, was treated very, very poorly by a security guard for coming in to use the restroom. Even though I had just left after meeting with a woman there for work search opportunities, trying to polish up my resume. He just looked at me and snapped at me and said, "How many times do you have to use the bathroom?" Well, to be honest, I have a bladder problem thanks to my blood pressure medication, and I told him it was none of his business. But he proceeded to treat me like that and berate me for a half hour before I finally put an end to it and said, "You just do not treat people that way." And when all was said and done, I had the support of everybody that was in the work source office, that was in the PCC office, the front desk, as well as the lady that actually ran the building, that sided with me and said that this was inappropriate, and even asked me if I wanted basically to pursue action. And at that time, yes, I did. And today, I am glad I did, because I hope that individual learns his lesson, never ends up where I am today, or anybody out here on the street. I don't wish this upon anybody. And there are, well, let's just say this is no picnic. Even though I'm camping out here and I'm in a good mood. For too often I suffered. And I don't know what's around the corner. I might be suffering tomorrow. Who knows? But I do know that so many people that I have met that I can call friends, or at least that I know out on the street, are suffering. And I would like to see an end to that at some point in my life, for myself and others, because everybody deserves a second chance. And it's as though society, even though a lot of people give from their heart, it's as though our society doesn't really want to really solve the problem with homelessness. And that's how I am here today. Besides the fact that I think I mentioned I just got out of the housing that I thought I needed. I came back here with more than I had when I first wound up on the streets. I don't need anybody except my children and a few people to care about me. But I don't need negativity in my life, and I don't need things except those things that I need to get by. And I wanted to keep this brief, but I hope people understand that when you look out on the street tomorrow and if you see somebody homeless, that they have a story and they have a life, and they had a life that led them to that, and it may not be what you think it is. But once people get here, the vast majority of people end up addicted to one kind of drug or another, and it just ruins people's lives. I refuse to allow that to happen to myself, but not everybody makes that choice or has it. And that is the saddest fact of life, is that unfortunately, no matter how good you have it, it can slip away from you. And that's how I ended up here today. And even though I wish I had changed a long time ago, I'm happy with who I am, and I'm happy in my place in life. And I look forward to tomorrow, and hopefully another video tomorrow. And I hope everybody's enjoying these. I like to be deep. I always have. And if you can like and subscribe, I would appreciate it. I've dreamed of maybe hopefully turning this into a small business for me. I know that sounds selfish, but if I can make this work, the vast majority of that money, I hope to start my own business actually. But the vast majority of the money up front, I would like help with paying my child support, if nothing else. I don't need anything else. I have no bills that I need to pay. And I have plenty of food, or at least I can find food. But I would like to be able to be there more than physically for my children and for my ex-wife. And any support I could get, I am grateful for. And I will leave it at that. So I hope everybody has a great day. It's almost sunset. Well, a couple more hours. And yeah, I know I have. And I hope to see you all again tomorrow. Take care, as always. Thank you.